RACROX.
Kickstarter, a place where dreams either come true or go to die, which in some instances, even after reaching your goal, is still the case. But while the tale of disappointment is many, the tale of success is uproarious when it happens. Shovel Knight paved the way, but now another game has come along to show us the raw power of passion once again. And that game, dear viewers, is none other than the one, the only, Hat in Time. Yes, I know it's technically a Hat in Time, but that doesn't roll off the tongue as well, so shush. And yes, I know I'm a little late to the party, but I ain't exactly out here getting review copies yet. Plus, I wanted to make sure I 100%ed the game before passing judgment, which ended up being a more confusing task than expected, but we'll get into that a little later. Another thing is, as hard as it was, I have avoided every single review of Hat in Time, whether it be on game review sites or even from some of my favorite content creators. I wanted to make sure my opinions were 100% mine going in, coming out, and even now writing this. Fair warning, there will be spoilers along the way. Because of how the game structures itself, they're basically unavoidable, especially if you consider even seeing what a later world looks like a spoiler. I know I do kinda, so if you're like me and haven't played the game yet, you may want to back out now and play this game ASAP, since if you are like me, you'll love it anyway. With that out of the way, let's jump right into the story and characters. I don't have any kind of review structure set up yet, so this seems as good a place as any to kick off. The main premise is quite simple. Hat Kid is flying through space when she approaches a weird planet. A member of the Mafia knocks on her window in space because, yeah, sure, why not? And after a disagreement, he breaks open the glass where physics decide they're now going to work and everything not bolted down, including 40 hourglass-shaped timepieces, get ejected from the ship and go hurtling down towards the planet. Hat Kid then sets out to recover the timepieces and prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. You know, on top of the fact that she needs them as fuel to get home. Simple enough, sure, but where the story shines is in the hilarious character interactions. Admittedly, the first major character you meet, Mustache Girl, is probably the weakest of the cast, but this is mostly due to her not getting enough screen time despite turning into the main villain a short ways into the game. Every other character, though, absolute gold. The story is split up into 5 worlds, or chapters, and with the exception of Chapter 5, each world tells its own miniature story which all the characters in said world are heavily invested in. From ridding the crime-filled city of Mafia Town from its leadership and eventually saving from Mustache Girl's mischief, settling the score between 2 arch-rivals competing for an annual movie award, to helping a demon regain control of a haunted forest where he holds your soul hostage, and even unleashing and subsequently curing a toxic plague onto a peaceful mountain society. When you really look at it, everyone on this planet is kind of a dick, and in some ways even Hat Kid herself is. However, this shared sense of dicketry creates kind of a bond between everyone involved, and you can't help but love every second you get to hear them speak. In particular, my favorite characters were the Conductor, the Snatcher, and the Crows. The Conductor is a textbook asshole. He'll do anything to beat resident Moon Penguin DJ Grooves, even going so far as cheating and endangering the life of passengers on his train, Hat Kid and even himself included.
And you better make it in time, alright? I don't care about the owls or yourself, but you don't dare blow up me train for real. It's my baby.
He's just such a lovable jerk. It's gotta be that Scottish accent, because despite all this, I fought hard for him to win that award. The Snatcher is just as much of a bastard as the Conductor, maybe even more so, but god damn is he charismatic.
What's up? You working on any contractual obligations lately? You better be. Remember our little deal?
I don't care if I have to lend him my soul, I want to help this dude out. He's just such a fun guy to be around. And the Crows. Oh man, the Crows. These guys were the fucking highlight. I just loved every single time I saw these guys pop up. They go beyond just being good characters. They're a testament to the detail Gears for Breakfast put into this game's presentation. Speaking of presentation, this game just oozes charm out of every nook and cranny. It wears its inspiration on its back with pride, but it also really strives to create its own identity and succeeds beyond belief. From the graphical style to all the little details and humor littered all over the worlds, and even the level structure. The first thing you'll really think to yourself while playing the game is, wow, this game really feels inspired by Super Mario Sunshine, and you'll think that with good reason. Chapter 1 screams Sunshine in many ways, with stuff like episodic level structure, the Red Coin-esque gold safe mission, the mission I've convinced myself has to be a reference to Pianta Village Episode 3, and these special blue time riffs that are clearly inspired by Sunshine's secret stages. This is all very deceptive though, because come Chapter 2, that Sunshine inspiration washes away to make room for a stark amount of originality with a faint but fair hint of Psychonauts. The level design shifts from a large open space to a set of mostly different linear levels, and there's enough well-hidden secrets to look out for along the way that the linearity never feels boring. Murder on the Owl Express will also go down in history as one of my favorite levels in any video game of all time. While not so heavy on the platforming, this level is all about atmosphere, a gritty murder mystery on a moving train. Now, I'm an absolute sucker for train settings, no matter what it's in, game, show, I don't care. And while the classic action-packed train heist is an itch Episode 4 scratches, it's the slowed down, chill but suspenseful mystery vibe Episode 2 channels expertly that really sucks me in. And the crows are the cherry on top. I love how they'll ask you personal questions and then your answers will come up again later in hilarious ways, and their shtick at the beginning about pretending to be express owls, along with their design and the way they speak, is unquestionably a reference to Psychonauts G-Men.
As you can tell, I am also an express owl. I do much hooting. From one owl to another, we can share details, yes? What is your uncle's sister's maiden name?
Stop. Road crew workers only beyond the yellow line.
You guys are road crew workers?
Yes, we work on the road with these red signs.
I see. Well, do you guys know where the milkman is?
Why do you ask that question? Are you the milkman?
Do I look like a milkman to you?
That information is restricted to the road crew. Please move along.
You might think these references cheapen the experience and make it less original, but they're handled with so much love and care, it's clearly an adoring homage to the games they loved, rather than just trying to copy the games of the past. And if I'm honest, I actually think the crows might even be funnier than the G-Men, as amazing as they were. Something I don't think was a direct reference, but gave me some major Thousand Year Door Glitz Pit vibes, was at the end of Chapter 2, which even though I'm going to be discussing the actual ending of the entire game later, I don't want to spoil this thing about Chapter 2. If you've played the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Chapter 3 continues the originality as you're immediately dropped in, and a wall of colored fire prevents you from going anywhere but one specific way, despite being able to clearly see collectibles on the other side of the fire. After making a deal with the Snatcher, you find out these walls are created by fire spirits, which, side note, the game actually has some pretty dark humor hidden underneath its cute exterior. I mean, look at this.
We want to die. Yay!
This is the first fucking thing these things say to you, and you take them out by tossing surrounding paintings into the fire to make it larger. Mind you, these paintings sometimes contain other people. This Mafia guy gets sucked into one, and then you just throw it right into the fire like some kind of godless killing machine. Anyway, in the first act, doing this to the first set of fire spirits nets you a timepiece, and you never do this activity again for a timepiece, but there are still a few sets of fire spirits in the woods for you to immolate and gain access to more of the forest. The most notable thing about this chapter, though, even more so than the ever-amazing Snatcher, is Queen Vanessa. The level where you're tasked with going into her mansion instills such a sense of dread and fear in both the build-up to getting there and the sheer horror of being inside it. While short, it is some of the scariest shit I've ever experienced in a game. Make no mistake, some levels in this game are not kid-friendly, let alone hat kid-friendly. But even still, I loved every second of being in that mansion. In retrospect anyway, when I was playing, I kinda wanted to shit my fucking pants. The final big level says to hell with episodic structure and drops you right in to free roam this huge world, and you can explore any path in whatever order you want, and the 4 major corners you visit while here are all varied from one another. There's no big talkative characters here, though you will meet some very funny locals and some very large, ominous, yet harmless goat monsters. While every world gives you a good sense of exploration, this one does it the best, and part of that is because it doesn't kick you out after getting a timepiece. Don't get me wrong, the episodic structure works wonders for the previous 3 chapters, allowing the worlds to be changed in just the right ways to give them the right feel and narrative progression. But what Chapter 4 gives up in that, it makes up for in leagues with its freeing platforming and platforming only design. You'll face some of the most challenging platforming in the game trying to best these peaks. I mentioned the blue time rifts earlier, which are Sunshine Secret Course like obstacle courses, but there's a second kind of time rift each of the 4 main chapters get. These rifts take you through the memories of one of the world's residents and give you some backstory into how the world got to be the way it is now. This is used expertly in Chapter 2, by the way, as if you like to explore, you can find the purple rift early on and be absolutely wowed at how the content is later used in the chapter. And what presentation discussion would be complete without mentioning the soundtrack, which by the way is now one of my favorite game OSTs ever. Every track bursts with personality, and every artist who worked on this OST should be immensely proud of what they created. I was so blown away by the music in this game, I just had to buy the soundtrack so I could listen to it while writing this review. Some of my favorite tracks in particular are the boss themes. These tunes are absolutely absolutely fucking jamming. I mean, you can't help but get just fucking hype listening to these songs, especially the track Your Contract Has Expired. It's just so fucking good. Wow, I said fuck a lot in the last 15 seconds. Whatever, I don't care. Just talking about these songs gets me amped up. Finally, that brings us to the last but most important topic, gameplay, as any good developer knows. Isn't that right? Wait, no, I said you were okay in the last video. A game that's charming is all well and good, but if it doesn't have the mechanics, level design, challenge, and satisfaction of overcoming said challenge to match, well, then it just can't be up there with the greats. Lucky for us, this was Gears for Breakfast's #1 priority. You heard me right, all that amazing charm, extra detail, and care didn't even matter to the team until they absolutely got the game feeling good to play. And let me tell ya, it feels goddamn good to play. HackKid controls so fluidly, and while at first I caught myself trying to do Mario's side jump, I quickly got accustomed to Hat in Time's unique but great control scheme. I played with a controller, a PS4 controller to be exact, and I would highly recommend doing this as playing with the keyboard feels unnatural and clunky, but with that controller in my hands, I was right at home pulling off even the most taxing of jumps. HackKid has her jump, double jump, and wall climb, but the big thing that she brings to the table is her dive. When diving in midair, your jump gets extended greatly, and you can even press the jump button again to cancel out of a dive, which is like its own jump in and of itself. Altogether, one complete standard jump can come with up to 4 button presses to get maximum distance. Personally, I love this design because it constantly keeps you on your toes, judging how far you should go with your jump, since if you do a dive but don't cancel out fast enough, you might go careening off a platform you're trying to land on. And it's so fluid that as soon as you land, you can get right back into jumping again, which makes for a really fun rhythm you can get into, especially when doing some cleanup in Chapter 3 when jumping from tree to tree. Speaking of getting into a rhythm, the dive can also help you go faster, as if you press the jump button right as you land on the ground, you'll do an extra quick long jump, and if you can get into a groove of chaining it, you can end up going quite fast. The level design is also built around the mechanics. It never feels like you're cheating the game to do something, but it also never feels like the game is limiting you with some bullshit. If the game doesn't want you to go somewhere, you simply probably won't be able to make the jump. Things can get pretty challenging in the later levels, and while I never outright lost all my health and died while platforming, falling from a chasm will usually send you back a bit to retry, but never so far back that you're saying to yourself, I proved I could do this part, why do I have to do it again? Where I did occasionally die was in some of the boss fights, and oh man, the boss fights. These things are flippin' miraculous. I mentioned the boss music really helps hype you up for the fights, but not only that, the absolutely incredible barrage of visuals will also pile on with the music to create a sense of ultra hype. That final boss especially, I'll talk about it a bit later, but it's the epitome of what I'm talking about here. Some boss attacks do get reused, but bosses do have a good set of original attacks, and when they use similar ones to previous bosses, the difficulty and intensity is always amped up. Also, there's been some recent talk of cameras and 3D platformers, and I think Hat in Time really saw all that talk and just like went bonkers with how good their camera and transparency is. It was insane. There are many secrets to find in each world in the form of yarn, relics, and tokens. Finding relics and putting them together will unlock purple time rifts, while getting tokens will net you more spins at the slot machine, where you can unlock bonus music tracks, accessories, and color schemes for HackKid. Collecting enough yarn will allow you to craft different types of hats for HackKid to use that grant you different powers, from bomb potions to slowing down time. There are certain situations and areas that you will need the correct hat to conquer, and this adds a little bit of a Metroidvania element to the game if you don't already have the hat. To be honest though, the only world I really had to go back to do cleanup in was Mafia Town, because I was always on the ball about collecting yarn, which meant I always had enough to craft the next hat when I needed to. The thing you'll be collecting the most of throughout the game though are pawns. Red pawns give you health, orange pawns let you go deeper in purple time rifts, and green pawns act as your currency. You can spend green pawns to unlock badges that give you little perks like faster cooldowns or not bonking your head while you dive into a wall. One badge you'll pretty much need on at all times is the hookshot badge, since after you get it, hookshot targets become a thing you see all the time. I understand why they made this a badge instead of a hat, since certain platforming challenges require you to use the hookshot in tandem with a hat power, and it would get annoying having to be constantly switching hats in midair, but it would have been nice if the hookshot ability was something you had active all the time once it was unlocked, rather than having to use a badge space for it. It's not a major thing since you still have 2 badge spaces with all the upgrades, but it's just something I noticed. Spending green pods will also allow you to unlock episodes in Chapter 1 and 2. By spending them on whatever chapter you want, getting contracts in Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 being free roam, you can largely do this game in whatever order you want, and with the only barriers being if you have the right tools, or rather hats, for the job, which as I mentioned, if you're a collector nut like me, you most definitely definitely will. This leads into my one and only actual gripe with the game. For a game so inspired by its Collect-A-Thon predecessors, the collection mechanics in this game are a bit lax. Don't confuse what I'm about to say for not liking the game for what it is, because while it is true I do prefer the more exploring focused worlds of Spyro and Banjo to the more linear levels of Crash and Psychonauts, I think Hat in Time utilizes both openness and linearity to its advantage and uses them to craft absolutely amazing level design, atmosphere, and story structure. I would not change a thing about how any of the levels are laid out or where the collectibles are. However, while you do get a counter for timepieces and yarn, you do not get a tally for them. For timepieces, this is largely irrelevant since you can look at the level selection screen and tell how many you have left in a world, but for yarn, it's a bit of a mess. There are way more balls of yarn in the game than you will ever need, but if you're like me, you want to collect them all anyway. My file might say 100% just because I have all the timepieces, but I know in my heart that's not true until I've collected everything I can. So it would have been nice for each world to have a yarn tally telling me how many I found in that world and how many I have left to find, since without it I could never actually be sure I've collected them all unless I looked at a guide, and that takes all the fun out of it in my opinion. This goes for the slot machine tokens as well, especially because even if you find every single token in the game, you still won't be able to collect all the bonus stuff from the machine. This in itself is also a small grievance in how the collectibles were handled, as I think there should have been enough tokens hidden away that you could get everything from there. Hell, they could have replaced some of the yarn balls with tokens, since yarn balls lose any actual practicality after you get the final hat. Finally, because there is a set amount of green pawns you will ever actually need in the game when factoring in the levels unlocked with them and the badges, a part of me would have liked to have seen the pawns be a finite collectible like gems in Spyro, just to add that last extra layer of exploring and collecting. There still could have been more green pawns than you needed, like with the yarn balls, but ultimately a finite amount to collect would add even more satisfaction to the completionist mentality of mine. As far as completion bonuses go in this game, it's no Dragon Shores or 3D Green Hill Zone. You get a special hat to basically say, haha, look, I experienced everything this game has to offer, except that might not even be true because there's no guarantee I got all the yarn and tokens. Saying all of this though, it's my Collect-A-Thon loving brain having these thoughts. A small wrinkle in an otherwise honestly perfect game that I didn't even really want to bring up, but I knew would eat me alive if I didn't say something. At the end of the day, the game is absolutely amazing from start to finish, and let's talk about that finish. Chapter 5 is one level, a gauntlet of intense platforming leading up to an epic final boss, but not before you get to have some hilarious interactions with all the characters you met along the way, including the ever giggle fit inducing crows. This level is lava themed because, of course it is. Before now, the worlds all had very original themes for a 3D platformer, the most sorta cliche one being Subcon's spooky theme, but even then it was done in such a good way that it never felt derivative. But even Gears for Breakfast couldn't resist making the final level a lava-filled hellscape, poking fun all the way through. At the end, you finally reach Mustache Girl, who has stolen all the timepieces you worked so hard to recollect. She's become judge, jury, and executioner, which, for a planet largely inhabited by assholes, isn't the best thing to have around. However, she notes that you never did anything directly to get in her way, and lets you go free, which you can actually do if you want before your friends chew you on to go back. When you walk up to her, she backlashes, and the final confrontation begins. Mustache Girl uses the power of the Chaos Summer timepieces to warp around the room quickly. But hit her enough and all your friends will join you in the throne room, all to tell her to
Get lost!
That's right, get lost!
Get lost!
Yeah, get lost!
And it gets a little sad there because it does actually seem like some part of Mustache Girl just wanted to help people but got corrupted by power along the way. In a fit of rage, she somehow explodes the room into an anime as fuck rainbow arena, with everyone watching as the final battle between her and Hat Kid commences. In this phase, she becomes faster and uses more moves, eventually becoming so fast she's impossible to hit. But have no fear, because in a trope I fucking adore, Hat Kid's friends are here to help her. The Conductor teams up with the Mafia to let you hit her before she can teleport, while the Snatcher teams up with the Goats to provide bombs that will break her shield. Getting even angrier, Mustache Girl starts targeting the Peanut Gallery, destroying them. And just when it seems all is lost, when the chips are down, a brave Mafia member— I'm sorry, this gets me every time. A brave Mafia member notices that when they die, they produce heart pawns that restore Hat Kid's health, and in an effort to help Hat Kid defeat Mustache Girl once and for all, him and everyone else start exploding to give Hat Kid enough power to take her out. It's cheesy, but honestly just such a touching moment that all your friends, even some of the ones that had tried to kill you beforehand, are now sacrificing themselves for you. I really do tear up a little bit every time, but then I'm immediately brought back by what happens next. And what that is a super fucking hype final sequence, with Mustache Girl throwing everything she has at you while you shrug off blows left and right, as more and more of your friends sacrifice themselves in the background. Thankfully, once you defeat her in this rainbow dimension, time flows backwards and everyone who died comes back. The planet is saved and you have all of your timepieces. Hat Kid notices Mustache Girl unconscious on the ground of the planet, and you're met with a difficult choice. Leave her to her fate at the hands of the Mafia, or throw down one timepiece for her to defend herself with at the risk of possibly not being able to make it all the way home. Of course, I couldn't help but feel sorry for her, so I threw her a bone and prepared to sail off, but not before a very tearful goodbye with some of my favorite characters begging me to stay. I'll be honest, that one hurt. Dug real deep. Even Hat Kid felt it, but she was off to whatever adventure awaits her in the free DLC that's coming. Hat in Time was an absolute blast to play and experience. There have been very few games that have left me just absolutely ravenous for more. Every detail, from gameplay to characters to overall charm, just blew me away at every turn. This is a game that deserves every ounce of support it can get. Gears for Breakfast deserves a gigantic round of applause for creating such an amazing modern classic, in an oft-forgotten genre that really crafts and shapes its own identity while paying respects to the games that came before it. If you only buy one game this year, make it a Hat in Time, because it is the best game I've played in 2017, which is a pretty high bar, and is honestly one of my favorite games of all time. I don't have an ending joke, just support this game, please, I beg of you, it really, truly deserves it.